You remind me.
Okay.
I think we're streaming.
Are we streaming? All right, we're setting up. We're setting up. I don't think we're quite streaming just yet. We might be streaming.
It says
we might be streaming.
The meeting is now.
Oh, we probably are. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Camera on.
And my camera's not on.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Technical difficulties. Doo-dah.
There.
Doo-dah.
There. Hello.
Hello. Did it.
Hi, OAC. So sorry that we're late. Terribly, terribly sorry that we're late. Shall we just start? No explanations. It's all my fault. It's completely my fault.
No, it's not.
And I'm also listening to an echo of myself on Facebook, which is very interesting. So I'll have to figure that out. But let's go on.
All right.
Hi, OAC. My name is Karen Bojti, and I am a member of the Ontario Autism Coalition's Board of Directors. And from time to time, we host Facebook Lives to examine the issues that we discuss on our page. These chats are an attempt, just an attempt, to unpack the complexity of politics, or the politics of autism, the autism of politics. How would it go, Laura? I don't know.
Complexity of politics of, stuff.
Yeah, I'm so frazzled right now because we're late and because I have an echo in my ear that is louder than my speaking voice.
Oh no.
We try with these Facebook Lives to pass on an oral history to advocates who are new to the scene. Mm-hmm. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Philip Lerner.
Hi.
Hi, Phil. When you carve a path for yourself, who comes along for the ride? We have a very unique conversation planned this evening between our seasoned self-advocate and OAC director, Philip Lerner, and Laura Kirby-McIntosh, former president of the Ontario Autism Coalition. Laura and I both have a lot of questions for Philip, and I hope that those who are watching will join us live. Please feel free to post questions, and I will do my best to insert your comments into the conversation. Hi, Philip. Hi, Laura. Hi again.
Hey.
Hello.
I'd like to get us started by showing an old clip of Philip when he was at the tender age of 16.
Guest.
Oh, we have a special guest.
Hello, Mr. Treasurer. How are you?
So I'm going to make Laura the host of the Facebook Live now, and we would like to show a picture of Cliff.
Hold on, one more special guest. This was not planned for.
Hi,
Mom. This was not planned for.
Hey.
Okay, we're live.
Okay,
move on, Mom. Give this young man a little bit of dignity, for heaven's sakes.
Good thing they can't hear that.
Photo bomb. Too funny.
Now I have to fix my hair.
Okay, so you want to start with the clip first? Okay, so Philip totally just got photobombed by his parents. That's not embarrassing at all. And now we're going to further embarrass him by showing a video clip of him from 2016 when he was just a little itty bitty 16-year-old advocate. And he came out to this protest here just in front of the Ministry of Education. It was while we were still working on the OAC's education recommendations report. And we had submitted, I think, our first draft. And we took to the streets outside the Ministry of Education. And here's what happened. Let me go full screen. And take it away.
Small but vocal group gathered outside the Ministry of Education. Every parent wants to know. Advocating for kids with autism. Among the crowd, 16-year-old Philip Lerner, student from Thornhill.
I feel really passionate about this whole thing.
That's the last one, Philip. I won't do that anymore. I know you're
for grades 1 to 8. I had
a grown person.
And I feel like kids now have a huge struggle to get that support.
Lerner says that support made all the difference in his life.
It was basically my growth from being a young child who had no idea what he's doing in the world to being who I am right now,
Along with getting their message out on Bay Street, the group is also presenting a list of 40 recommendations to the ministry in the hopes of improving education for students with autism. Among the recommendations, a freeze on any future cuts to special needs education, and the province-wide implementation of applied behavioral analysis, or ABA.
ABA is to kids with autism what wheelchairs are to kids with mobility impairments. For our kids, it's the way they learn, it's the way they access education.
Until services for students with autism are improved, these parents and children say they'll keep fighting.
I feel like it's kind of my responsibility since I already
A
got
lot
the
of
help.
familiar faces
Now I
there.
need other people get the help. You know what I mean?
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, that certainly wasn't your first protest though, was it, Phil?
Actually, I think it might have been.
I feel like you like, didn't you get dragged along to a few before that, like at Queen's Park? I know your parents came.
Maybe one. I know my parents came. I remember there was one big one in 2016 when I started becoming more
Yes.
into the advocacy.
Yeah,
that
that
one I
was
actually
later that
missed
year.
because I had another. I was going on a weekend trip. I'm just gonna say it bluntly.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. So and then in 2019, you wrote this article where you talked about how ABA helped you. But I guess we have to be honest with people and admit that you kind of got pulled into this whole autism advocacy because you happened to go to school with my son. And
Actually, full disclosure, not
yeah,
fully true. Not
not
fully true.
fully true. Well, it's how you
No,
heard
I
that,
got-
but
No, I don't think so.
no, but then you
I heard about
well,
it through the news.
really?
Do you know
So-
what I heard about? When I heard ABA was being reduced from 6 years old to 5 years old. That's when I
Right.
heard about all this stuff.
Right.
That's when I joined.
Wow.
Laura's
Well,
always
I
trying to
think-
take credit for things, Phil, you know? So
Well, full
there she
disclosure,
goes
though.
again.
There I go again. Full disclosure, though, the Lerners and the McIntoshes have been family friends since Phil and Cliff were in grade 1. Cliff is my son.
More than half my
So-
life.
Yeah. So we're going to do the obligatory childhood embarrassment now, and just show this is Phil and Cliff when they played together in baseball back in. This is 2008. They were in a special needs baseball league, and they actually played baseball together for like more than 5 years. And then this is us.
Cliff
skiing.
was such a good home run hitter. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I know. You guys were so great. And this is Phil and Cliff and Clara skiing with us back in the day. So we've known each other for a long time. I'll stop sharing screen now and let's just put the focus back on. I'm curious about what you said, Phil, because I always sort of felt, I don't know, like did I sort of, I don't know, pressure you into all of this, but you have a different
No.
memory. So tell me
Not at all.
about how you remember your journey into activism.
Before 2016, Laura,
Mm.
I had no idea that the OAC existed.
Wow.
I had no idea that you did any form of advocacy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Or maybe I was told like once or twice, but like it wasn't something that I really gripped onto.
Interesting. And then what do you remember seeing on the news? Just about the age 5 cutoff?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not watching this happen.
Wow. Okay. And then what was your next step from there?
My next step, well, first off, I found out about the OAC. That's a good
Okay.
first step.
Right.
And then I think I found out about that protest at Queen's Park, the massive one in 2016.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I missed it, but
Yeah, it was in May. So
I started hearing more and more about protests, and I came
Mhm.
to what I could. That was my next step.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that the one where I was interviewed was my first or second protest.
Yeah. Okay.
Those were my rookie years.
Yeah. We were so proud of you that day. My goodness.
Thank you.
The reporters just latched onto you. And you know, it it was so nice to be talking about education and to have an autistic student speak about his experiences directly, that it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm stepping off camera here. Go, Phil, do your thing. And
then she went right back on.
It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. All right. So do you want to get into the pre-submitted questions, Karen?
I do, and I have to apologize because I am having technical difficulties here on my end, and I can hear the Facebook live feed happening, and so there are literally voices circling my head.
Gosh.
And so what I'm doing is I am lip reading your faces to try and determine what you're saying, and so I apologize. I may even interrupt even more than I usually do. So let's go to some of the pre-submitted questions. But what we are particularly interested is your political advocacy, Philip. And you did mention how you became aware of what was happening. But in 2016, when the provincial government implemented an age 5 cutoff, what was your reaction to that?
My reaction was a mix of shock, because I was like, excuse me, we are doing what? And anger. But in this case, it was more constructive anger. It was not like tantrum anger. But I also think it kind of fueled something within me, because up until that point, Laura, this will also surprise you, I kept autism a secret.
Really?
Yeah.
I know. I remember.
Up until 16, 17, about that. I think maybe about 6 months after the Autism Doesn't End at 5 campaign. That's when I made it public.
Yeah. Why did you feel that you needed to keep it a secret?
The last thing I needed was a label. I already knew I was different from all my peers. And I don't know why I thought they knew it too, because I was already in a community class. And I just didn't need a label.
You know, yeah.
Go ahead.
It's
okay. She's experiencing.
I'm processing. Yes, I am, and I apologize. So Laura, you may have to jump in more than you ordinarily would. But it is interesting. I wonder about our children. Laura, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I don't know how much I want my child to be involved in the political fight. I want him to live his life.
Yeah.
And do his thing. I don't want him to be a professional advocate.
Yeah.
And yet I want him to advocate for himself. I want him to understand that the system moves very slowly and won't always work in his favor. How did your parents feel about you jumping in?
They jumped with me, to put it simply.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so I've got some questions.
Especially my dad, who's actually right now on the executive board.
He is indeed. He's our treasurer.
A massive jump. He cannonballed into the deep end.
Yes, he did.
Oh, yeah, that's good. So I'm going to, Laura, you may have to jump in a lot because I'm very confused. I am hearing voices. So we had a question from Carla. Have you ever experienced burnout and or a feeling of being completely overwhelmed? And if so, what strategies have helped you come back from these headspaces? What techniques do you feel could help prevent burnout or being overwhelmed in school or workplaces?
Okay, I'm going to start off by saying what I call burnout may not be the actual definition of burnout that's used in the autism community. I just call it getting overwhelmed and need to stop. So my strategy is simple. My strategy is I stop. My strategy is I take some time alone. This room is where I do that a lot.
Mhm.
I just curl up in my bed or something. Sometimes when it's tough, I actually have a life coach I talk to as well, which is super helpful. I've never met a smarter person. No offense to the two of you.
None taken.
All good. All good.
And yeah, I usually take some time alone. I watch videos.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do self-affirmations.
Nice.
And I treat myself. I've heard a lot of teachers say this, that sometimes the best thing to do the night before an exam is to go watch a movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of, well, unless I'm really unprepared, which has happened before, I try to do that. I try not to study too hard the night before. I try to not let burnout take place.
Yeah. And I remember seeing you as a child, Philip. You were really good at speaking about what you needed in that moment, and if you needed a break, and sometimes you would walk away. I think one of the best things about the baseball league for both of you was it taught you so many social skills that can often be difficult for autistic kids to learn.
I just wanted to hit the ball.
Right? But learning how to accept it when you missed, or learning how to accept it when your team lost. And that was something that was so difficult for so many kids on that team. But eventually you guys picked up so many skills that you transferred over to a different baseball league where no one knew that either of you were on the spectrum. And you were fully integrated and you just played your little hearts out. But you were always really good at saying, no, I need to stop and taking a break. And you'd learned that as a strategy of just like, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to cool down and come back.
I'm going to try a small experiment for myself, and I'm going to close Facebook on my browser. And I hope that will not stop this live field, because I am afraid that I cannot follow what you guys are saying. I'm okay. So let's see if we're still on Facebook. Oh dear. Want to sing a song while we wait, or should we just proceed?
I mean, I would sing a song, but then that's really going to mess up your brain.
No, I know. Well, now I don't have the echo. Now I can actually hear you.
And it
was like, well, I closed Facebook on my browser, and okay, so we don't want to take any time with that. I'm hoping. It looks like we're still running on Facebook. I apologize, everyone. It was crazy. There were echoing voices swirling around my head.
I've been in that spot.
Just woo,
Actually,
on this
Karen,
delay.
What
I couldn't understand.
Karen, 1 second.
Yeah.
Something you should hear is that what you just experienced was sometimes autistic experience when they have stimulatory issues.
I think I need a break.
Go ahead. That's okay.
Take
that space. But
I was kind of thinking that, Philip. I was sort of thinking like there's something very interesting, because it was like and then like I'm like whoa, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if maybe it was the gods teaching me a lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, girl.
Experience
see if you can handle this, right?
Yeah. But I mean, think about our kids. Both of our sons had trouble with sound and processing and being in rooms with multiple conversations. You just got a small taste of that.
Yeah, and I didn't like it.
Are you okay?
Right.
I'm okay. No, I am totally fine. Yeah. But you had my undivided. I was like looking at your nose, Philip, and I was looking at your lips, and I would hear the odd word, and I'm like, okay. And because I know you a little bit, I could sort of guess at where you were going, and it was trippy.
I do not pay that close attention to people.
I do. Okay, so can we circle back to politics
Yeah.
now that
Yeah.
I actually have my head straight? You know, one of the things, Philip, when Laura and I were talking about, like, let's do a Q&A, and and also you had suggested that we do another live, and I was like, yes, absolutely, we should do another live. And I'm in a conundrum when I'm speaking to self-advocates, because I don't really want to pry, you know, and I don't really want to go like, so what was it like when you were 3, and how did you feel about this, and how did you feel about that, and making people go deep. I don't remember what things were like when I was 3. You know,
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly, I have, you know, little images that come to me, a story here and there, may or may not have happened, right? And here we are like, okay, teach us. And we'll sit there and go like, so Phil,
well,
what's it like to
what
be
I'm
autistic? You know?
Oh, come on.
Right? But that's the danger, right? And so I don't want to do that. And what I want to know is, I want to know about your advocacy. I want to know about why you're interested in politics. I want to know about the work that you're doing with the Adult Services Committee in the OAC. But I also am very cognizant of the fact that there are parents who really want to hear from you. They want to know what it's like to be on the spectrum, you know?
You don't need these air quotes for that. That's a fine term.
Yeah. You know, but
I think you raise a really good point, Karen, because when we ask anybody from any marginalized community to share their experience, we're asking them to expend a lot of emotional energy and labor. And on the one hand, I know that we have in the OAC, we have a parent community that is really, really eager to learn from autistic advocates. But I think it's important to set boundaries. And, you know, when we're doing lives like this, to be able to say to Phil, like, you're in charge here. You decide what you share and what you don't.
Well, then I'm just going to tell you right now, to be completely frank, I cannot do English today. This is not good. To be completely frank, I will tell you if I don't want to delve into something. I'm just going to say it point blank.
I believe you. Okay. Well,
that's my boundary. That's my boundary.
Cool.
Just be respectful. And I know you two will.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, why don't we, Karen, do you want me to ask the second question?
Go right ahead.
Put in? Okay. So Sarah asked, oh goodness, are all of these questions hers? Wow.
Sarah asked a lot of questions.
She had great questions.
Hi, Sarah.
All right. So let's just start with the first one. And this is great because it ties into some of the work that you've been doing recently. What are some of the most important things an employer needs to know about hiring and supporting an autistic worker?
I think the first thing is just the general rule of thumb when it comes to autism. When you've met one autistic person, you have met one autistic person. Exactly. No two autistics are going to have the same needs, and that will mean you have to be a little bit adaptable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is probably the biggest thing with employers that I'm really nervous about. I feel like whenever they hire autistics, this is in some cases, sometimes it's kind of a pity hire.
Token hire?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a hire out of a good need, which is nice, but that's not really what we're going for here.
Right.
What we're going for is autistics actually making a difference in a company.
Right.
In high-level jobs that they can handle.
Yeah.
A lot of autistics are really, really smart, especially in one specific area, and you'll hear about that a lot.
Yeah, anything to do with systematizing. But I mean, that's a bit of a generalization, but I think you're right. I mean, there's so much variety on the spectrum, right? So, you know, hiring somebody who's nonverbal as opposed to verbal, for instance, big difference there. But I mean, you talked earlier about having a period in your life where you didn't want people to stick that label on you. And again, tell me if I'm probing too far here, but
I always will.
Okay. And that's what I love, is the honesty. That's my favorite part. But do you ever struggle with whether or not to disclose your diagnosis in the interview process? I know you've had a few jobs. Like, do you hold back on disclosing that until after you get the job, and then get the job and then ask for accommodations? I mean, that's got to be something that every autistic struggles with when working. It's like, am I going to disclose at all, and if so, when?
I kind of have two separate answers for you, because for me, it depends on where I am in the process.
Mm-hmm.
During the application process, there's often a question, do you identify as a person with disabilities?
Mm.
And I always kind of hesitate when I answer that question,
Right.
because I'm thinking of two things. One, will that affect me getting an interview? Or two, do I, based on how I operate, do I actually qualify? Because even though I have a diagnosis, I don't feel like it affects me at all in the workplace.
Interesting.
So usually I put yes, because it is the honest and a hard truth. And during the interview, I actually approach it very differently.
Oh, okay. Tell us about that.
I actually, this is a bit of a strategic move on my part. I use it to my advantage.
Okay.
I use it to tie into stuff I'm doing with the board to hopefully impress them.
Right.
Okay.
And I really hope no employers are watching them, or else they'll know all my tricks.
But I don't think it's dishonest in any way to say,
It's not.
hey, look, not only do I have this diagnosis, but I'm an activist, I'm an advocate, I'm participating in my community.
I work on a team.
I'm a volunteer.
Being on the board, it actually has a lot of hireable skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
For
It does.
sure.
What about the interview process? Have you done a lot of interviews?
Through my co-op program, I have done a lot of interviews. This year, I think I did, in the span of September to December, I think I did 7 co-op interviews.
Wow.
Okay. And the process, the coming in, the chit chat, how's the weather? Did you get here okay? All of those things that you have to do. When people are going to job interviews, they're being vetted from the moment they walk in the door and they speak to the receptionist, right? And the way that they sit down in the lobby, what they're doing in the lobby, and how they walk to the room for the interview, sit down, how they do the pleasantries, which the older I get, the more stupid I think that is.
Right.
I would agree.
Right? And so how's that for you? How do you get yourself around that? Is it exhausting?
It is kind of tiring being in an interview. I know we're going to get to this term later.
Okay.
But being in an interview for anyone, not just an autistic, means you're putting up a mask.
Yes.
Showing your best self.
And you and I have talked about that. We've talked about
We
masking.
have talked about that a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we're going to talk about it tonight.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because it's a fun topic.
All right. Well, why don't we talk about it now? What is, like, when you're masking in a situation like that, do you feel yourself masking? Is it a conscious decision, or is it like switching modes on your device, or what does it feel like masking?
It's actually ironic that you asked that, because you actually a lot of times don't feel it.
Interesting.
It comes.
Yeah.
It comes. Maybe you feel yourself holding back. You feel yourself just kind of acting in a way that you know someone else wants you to act. But it's not like I'm going in there prepping for it.
Right.
It's like, I know it's going to happen. There's a process I really take for myself.
I wonder sometimes,
and that's the
Phil,
exhausting part.
About masking. Like, as you said, we all do it. I mean, I'm masking right now.
Sure.
Like I'm still a little bit frazzled. and I'm a little tired, I just had an argument with my husband, like, and I'm pretending I'm not pissed off at him, all that stuff. There's a lot of things going on in my head as I'm talking to you, right?
Mhm.
And I wonder, like, if you are somebody who's been made aware, okay, you're different. Philip, you are different. You're different from the other boys and girls, right? And if you're walking around through life going like, oh, okay, I'm different, and then you walk into a situation like a job interview, it's like, well, let's just make sure I don't act too autistic. Well, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Like, is it that there's just a lot of interference? Because we all take on personas. Am I messing with your head too much? Like,
A little bit, but I
yeah.
think I know where you're getting at.
Well, I just mean, like,
I'll try to answer that.
Yeah, okay. Like, there's a notion of like, I'm supposed to be this way,
Mhm.
and I don't really know
Sorry,
if
I'm
NTs.
just gonna try to answer that actually.
Yeah, try. I'll shut up.
The one thing in an interview, it's exactly as you guys said. There's a lot of pleasantries, which I don't have a problem with.
Mhm.
The one thing I do kind of have a hard time with is acting so formal
Mm.
for a 30-45 minute session. When I'm nervous, I get very in my head. I'll start talking to myself in my head, and that's not very helpful when someone's trying to ask you questions.
Right. So
Aaron
So
says, I hired an autistic girl at my business and she's the best employee I ever had.
mhm.
I have a daughter on the spectrum and I believe we have to make this change in our own backyard. So it's true, there are parents here who could be employers, who
well,
are
then
employers.
to comment on that, if you have any co-op student positions, I want to hear about them.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think it all comes down to being creative about matching skills that an autistic person has to an employment situation. And
Actually, I'm
you
going
were,
to disagree with you there.
oh, okay. Oh,
I don't think that you have to be creative about it at all. I think for half an hour, if you can, forget about the diagnosis. Treat them. Why am I saying them? Treat us like you treat any other candidate.
Right.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get it. We don't want to be treated differently. We want to be treated with respect. We want our needs to be taken into account, but really, shouldn't you be doing that for everyone you meet?
Yeah. You know what? Dignity is dignity. You're absolutely right. The thing that I was thinking about when I made that comment was just, I think for parents that have kids that are maybe on a different part of the spectrum than you are. And it was interesting, actually, just a couple of days ago, I was talking to Cliff about some of the kids that were in your grade 1 class and like how
Oh
you
my
are
goodness.
all on different places on the spectrum and how you stayed friends, some of you, all these years, despite those differences, right? And you're all kind of in different places right now. Like you're a student that
Very.
is in university. We have some that are working. We have some that are going to college. We have some that are just like kind of sitting right now, waiting till the pandemic is over. But I've heard different people speak about matching sometimes the interests and abilities of somebody on the spectrum with employment. So one story that I've never forgotten, and forgive me if I've told you guys before, but I don't know if our viewers have heard it, is about somebody who was very affected by their autism, nonverbal, and their favorite thing, their favorite sound in the world was the sound of smashing glass, which was a problem because, like a classmate that you had that was briefly interested in knocking over water, this kid loved to go around and break glass. And so shopping in the grocery store, for instance, not a good thing. But with the help of some social workers and the family, they got creative. They got this kid a job at a recycling plant.
That is so smart.
right, by the conveyor belt that was bringing in glass. And if anything fell off onto the ground, it was this kid's job to pick it up, walk over to the bin and smash it in. Plus they got
Dream
to hear the
job.
sound of smashing glass all day. Like if you can match it, it's like Cliff and hockey or you and stats. If you can match the interest and the ability of the person with the job, then you've got the most loyal, reliable employee you are ever going to have in your life. And so it's like what
I think
you
that
said,
extends to
business sense. It's
outside the
not,
spectrum too.
yes, of course.
Mhm.
Isn't that what we all
Yeah.
want?
Yep.
Right?
Find something
Yes,
that suits
exactly.
your talents. Yeah. There's a
Exactly.
very good documentary. We should try to find it, Philip, and
Ooh.
share it with the community about, now I believe this person is in Norway, but he's a businessman who has a son who's on the spectrum, and he runs a kind of temp agency where they send workers into various placements. And he expanded his business into incorporating autistic workers into this placement business. And one
I
of the
like
things
it.
that they do first is that they do no job interviews whatsoever. And they test
like
the
that.
individuals for their aptitudes, right? And then they find work. You know, they do placements for them. I often thought we have to bring this guy to Canada. And one of the things they discovered,
We've got something similar in Canada, don't worry.
Are you talking about Special Eastern?
Yes, I am.
It slipped into my mind.
I think that's what you're talking about. I'm going
Slipped
to
in my
drop a link
mind.
in the chat.
So one of the things that they discovered during this process was that the workers, first of all, were always on time, very few sick days, took, you know, a minimum amount of breaks, very few complaints, and they were finishing their contracts so quickly that all of their estimates were completely wrong. Like they were the most efficient, you know. So they had
I love
workers
that so much.
who were very good at paying attention to detail, and the kind of details that maybe neurotypicals might find boring or, you know, beneath them somehow or whatever it is. But these are skilled jobs that required someone to be thinking and concentrating.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, can we just do away with the interview process? It seems like we want to be innovative in the workplace, and yet we're not. We have the same old ways of getting a job. And imagine if we could just do away with that.
Or what if the interview,
You know?
was letting you do the job for half an hour?
Yeah.
You know, having somebody explain to you.
You have to be careful with that, especially with co-op,
I suppose.
because we're here, we're students, we want to learn. We don't want to be
Yes.
thrown into the job without any training.
Free labor. Yeah. Slave labor.
Well, there's another question here from Sarah that I think is actually really good at this point. What companies do you know of who are generally autism friendly to work for? So we mentioned Special Eastern. I wonder if either of you know of others.
I've got a couple.
Okay.
I know of companies that have posted jobs through Special Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple banks. I know CIBC has done it.
Nice.
I know RBC has done it.
Good.
I think the CRA might have done it too.
Probably. So it's
I was
interesting.
just contacted actually a couple of days ago by a Bell Canada representative who wanted to plug into the OAC, and I'm waiting to hear back from that person.
Do you need any data analysis?
Well, you know, I'll mention it.
Actually, somebody wants to know, Phil, what's your dream job?
I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
I know I want to do something with data. I don't know what with data. I don't know what industry. I've got some ideas.
Right.
But I think what I know I want to do is I want autism to be in a job somehow or in my life somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I want them both there. If I can combine them, that would be great. Or if I can just have a data job and do autism stuff on the side, also really, really great.
When you say autism stuff, what do you mean? What kind of work? What does
I
that
mean
look
advocacy.
like? Advocacy.
I mean advocacy. I mean what I'm doing right.
Yeah.
So would a dream job be combining those two and looking at survey data about autistic people in Canada and then using that data to advocate for what people need?
depending on what tools I use, because that's also big for me.
Right.
Yes.
Cool.
You think you could be a headhunter?
Ooh.
What's that term? Remind me.
Headhunters are people who are hired by companies to find the right employee, to find the right fit.
I don't think that would be for me.
Mm.
At least I wouldn't be one. I wouldn't want to be the person approaching the employees. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's like
So-
very forward and almost confrontational.
You have been doing work for the OAC and the Adult Services Committee. You are in charge of
Yep.
the Adult Services Committee. Can you tell us a little
Co-chair.
bit about the projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I have one main one that I did. It's all over the OAC Facebook page. This was basically, we had a few self-advocates unanimously decide to talk about some of their hireable skills. And we wanted to actually create a couple of candidate profiles to show employers, okay, we got 3 people here. Here are some of their really employable skills. You don't know anything about them. What do you think? Now, after you've seen it, oh, by the way, they have ASD. And let the shock factor do its job.
Right.
Yeah.
And let that moment of realization kick in.
That's
One
really
of the problems that we have in the OAC is that efforts like yours go unnoticed by the general population. I mean, they're not unnoticed by us, but they go unnoticed by the larger parent population. And we understand why. Laura and I understand this very well, that parents are very, very focused on what they need to do for their family and for their families. And it's very hard to look 10 years or 20 years into the future.
Of course.
We need to get better.
Yeah.
We need to get better at highlighting your work.
Well, I think the good thing for this thing was my audience wasn't necessarily the parents here. My audience was the employers. So where I really wanted to spread this out was on LinkedIn.
Right, which you did.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That was my top priority.
Yeah. So who you're targeting,
Yeah.
I'm targeting the employers. I want them to see things.
So what were the responses?
Well, we only had 3 candidates, which was a little less than we were hoping for, but it did the job. Some of the skills that we noticed were Excel, customer service, technical consulting experience,
Right.
really passionate workers. This, if you put this onto a formal resume, boom, you're good. You're golden.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting question that's come in from Tangerine. She says,
Hello.
usually at the end of an interview, the interviewer will ask what you expect from them, the employer. How do you answer that question when you get it? What would be your response?
I actually haven't always gotten that question,
Okay.
but hypothetically,
You did.
I would say I would want a superior, a supervisor, a manager who was helpful and kind, but who also gave me a little bit of free rein to try and figure things out. I would want someone who was a little bit adaptable. Like, unless there's like a super, super hard deadline, if I don't get something done right by the deadline, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this hard work for you right now, talking to us, Philip?
Yes and no. Yes, in a sense where I have a bit of a filter. I am masking a bit because that's just the way it is right now. But no, in the sense that I enjoy it. So
yeah. I remember one time you and I got into an argument, and I insisted that you were extroverted. You were an extrovert. You said
no, you're not. You're not winning this one.
I know. See, we got into this argument. I was like, "What are you talking about? Look, we joke. We haven't spent that much time together in real life, unfortunately, because of COVID. But you're you're so much fun to be around. You're great at a party.
That doesn't mean that someone's an extrovert, though.
So what's your definition of that? I see you as an extroverted person. I see you as outgoing and gracious. And okay, so why? Tell me why.
All the things you said are correct, except the word extrovert. You can be outgoing.
What's so funny about this?
Fun. Go ahead.
I've had the same debate with my daughter. I think.
Oh, you've had the same debate. So
yeah. I think of her as an
Claire considers herself an introvert.
Yep.
You see, okay, you get it. You see now.
I get your point, but it doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean you're right.
So is it that if given the choice between being with a large group of people and working alone, is it that you would rather work alone, or
no, not quite?
So
the actual definition,
yeah,
the actual definition is what would you do to get energy? If you want energy, would you go into your own space and read a book? Or would you go into a crowd of 100 people?
So I guess I'm an introvert.
Fascinating.
I'm an introvert. I like going to crowds sometimes, but it takes a lot out of me.
Yeah.
It's not where I go to get energy.
Fascinating.
That's
really, really cool.
I think the scientific definition of introvert extrovert.
Very cool. We've got lots of comments coming in here. Emily's asking, what was your first job?
Okay. Well, my first job, I'll go with my very first. I did a little bit of a paper route when I was 10.
I remember that.
That was exhausting.
Proud. Yes.
But my first actual job, I'm going to say, was a swim instructor.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I was a swim teacher for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And actually the picture on that article that I think you guys already showed was actually a picture of me at my last lifeguarding job.
Nice. Okay. And then, oh, sorry, I closed it off. There's a question. Where do you work now?
Right now I'm actually on a co-op job. I'm working for NRC Canada.
What does that stand for?
National Research Council.
Oh, I bet they have.
I work for the Innovation Research Assistance Program, and I'm essentially the guy kind of doing back-end stuff, making sure our records are up to date, running and improving reports, stuff like that.
Cool. Very
It's
cool.
all done in Microsoft Excel.
Your favorite. Do you have any nonverbal autistic friends who have jobs?
Actually, I don't think I have any nonverbal autistic friends, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. Most of the autistic friends I have are quite verbal.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now
I wonder about that too, Philip. Sometimes I think that we're at the mercy of the categories of diagnosis, right? And autism is this big, the first thing they tell us when we're parents is that there's a big spectrum, and they can be kids who are non-speaking, to kids who are very, very, very verbal, to kids who have academic challenges and intellectual challenges, to kids who are super brilliant and all that sort of stuff. And every kid needs an individualized plan.
100%.
So our community is as vast as it can be. And there is a great divide between generally people who have children who can speak or children who are non-speaking, and we're often, we've often find ourselves in between arguments between self-advocates who are highly verbal and have not been exposed to very many people who are non-speaking. And I think that's the core of many of the conflicts, because the trajectory is quite different for non-speaking people, and the opportunities are narrowed, for them. And we have yet to come up with innovations to include non-speaking people.
It's a really, really tough one. I want to say that all autistics have what it takes to be employed, but I'll be perfectly honest. If I had someone in an interview who was nonverbal, I'm not 100% sure how to get past that because communication is so important in the workplace.
Right. No, you'd have to find alternative ways to communicate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were to have a reliable method of communication, yeah, you can make it work.
Of course. Well, that's
Maybe
something
if they use sign language,
Yep.
if you use sign language and you already had someone who knows sign language that they can kind of stick close to,
or
it could work out.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely true. Nonverbal poses an extra degree of difficulty. I'll be the first to admit it.
This brings me around to the therapy piece and the intensity of supports that people need. And one thing that we find is that there is a very large community of self-advocates who seem to be working against the OAC's demand for more services, for needs-based services. And it gets tricky, I know. Like, this is
I planned an answer for where you're going.
Oh, you know where I'm getting at.
I planned an answer for where you're going.
So, it's hard for us. We have some very, very angry and upset parents who are deeply offended when they're being told that the supports that they are pursuing are wrong, and they're being told that by a population who may not have the same experience and knowledge that these parents have. And yet at the OAC, we really do want kumbaya. We want to find a way for these two communities to get along. And yet there is a great divide.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm definitely going to speak to this because this is probably the most important topic we're going to cover, in my opinion.
Okay.
I understand the divide. I get it. I've actually been in a really unique position as an autistic because I've been on both sides. I haven't been a parent, no, but
not yet.
Nowhere near. But anyway, I've been on I'm going to call it the autism side because, well, I am autistic. I've been in ASD class for 8 years. I have had ABA. I'm one of those self-advocates who had a really good ABA experience. Reach out if you ever want to chat about that. But I also hear the other side just as strong. I hear that ABA has not gone well for some people. It sucks. I feel awful for them. I really do. And I can imagine being in the parent's position, being told the therapy that you chose for your child is wrong. The way I try to approach this is, I don't think anyone can know a child better than their parent. I try to, even if I disagree with it, respect the decision that's made. I think mutual respect is all you can do. You don't have to agree. I'm actually really, really good friends with a self-advocate, and we disagree on almost everything. It's hilarious.
Neat.
It's hilarious.
I wonder if social media is more to blame. I find, generally speaking, that when I meet someone in person, even if, well, first of all, it's a little bit rude to weigh in on a parenting decision. But that being said,
here it is a gray area.
Once we meet, it's pretty easy to talk about things. Yeah. It's and should these two worlds collide or should they not? Should we live as separate entities? Eventually, our children will become adults. We hope that they will be self-advocates. We hope that they will speak up and have the ability.
We hope they're not going
to
have to be political advocates.
That's my hope.
Yes.
But to answer your question,
yeah,
I don't think we can separate. We can't.
Yeah.
The whole point, one of the whole points of the OAC is for parents to learn from self-advocates and the other way around as well. If we're separating, we're defeating one of the whole purposes of the organization, in my opinion.
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
hard. This is very hard to talk about.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's very hard to.
It
It's
is.
like
I
deeply
just went
personal stuff.
totally in my head.
Look at Laura's like, I don't want to go there.
No, it's not.
And
that
I'm like, let's go.
it's not that I don't want to go.
Let's talk about it. You know,
It's hard to talk about.
it
I'm
is.
processing so many different things.
It is.
And because I mean,
Laura,
Karen,
do you need a stimulatory break?
no, just more Diet
10,
Coke.
9,
That's
8,
all
7,
I
6,
need.
There you go.
5, 4. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
There we go.
4, 9, 8, 7.
No, it's
Keep going, Laura.
I have
What
so
are you
many
doing?
different
I'm
thoughts.
doing a
I
countdown
think-
that I do with my
I
son.
think
Go
she's
ahead, Laura.
stimming. I'm not sure. But it's, you know, the divide has been at sometimes so wide, and yet I think like and I think we forget sometimes that this is true in any movement, among
Yeah,
any group of
100%.
marginalized people. I mean, Karen grew up in the peace movement.
Oh,
I grew up in PC politics. The infighting
I'm
inside.
growing up in the autism movement.
You're growing up there, you know, whether you're part of Black Lives Matter or you're fighting for mental health or you're fighting
There
for
are so many movements now.
there's like in any organization or any movement, there's, you know, there's splits, there's divisions. But I think the thing that I've learned to do, and I think you've learned to do this in your relationship with other self-advocates, is to say, okay, look, there's this thing that we fundamentally disagree on. Let's put that over there. And now there's all these things that we agree on, right? So regardless of your position on ABA, we can talk about education. We can talk about ending seclusion and restraint and exclusion in school. We can talk about the need for employment. We can talk about the need for accessible housing for people on the spectrum. We can talk about human dignity, all of those things that we have in common. And that's so much more than just the fight for therapy. But of course, the OAC was born fighting for therapy. And that's been.
I'm just going to mention, I'm going to go one step further, Laura.
Go.
I'm going to say, even if you disagree on everything, you can still make it work. It's really hard, though.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
all comes down to one thing, remembering that we all overall have the same goal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We all want autistics to have a better life. That's all we want.
Yes.
And if you can
Mhm.
show respect purely based on that,
Mhm.
you don't have to like the person.
Yeah.
This goes for self-advocates. This goes for parents.
Mhm.
You don't have to like the person.
Oh, yeah.
You don't
not-
have to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, say not all parents are best friends. You know,
Oh, of
like
course.
Laura and I
Of
are not
course.
arm in arm with every single member in the OAC.
Not all self-advocates are
Sometimes
best
we
friends.
even argue
Yeah.
up ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my
Hey,
gosh.
There's
Yeah.
there's a couple of questions here that I'm looking at the time and
Let's do it.
and I just want to get a couple of, because there's some good questions here about school and education.
Oh, perfect.
So at what age did you transition into a mainstream classroom? And was it with supports? And then like, how was your experience moving from that classroom to the mainstream classroom, which I guess you did when you entered high school?
It was a very gradual process for me.
Okay,
I started off JKSK full mainstream.
right.
That, although I don't remember anything bad about it, apparently that didn't go well because I got moved schools.
Yeah.
In Wilshire, that I was part of the ASD pilot project.
Mhm.
I think progressively throughout the years, I spent more and more time
Mhm.
in the integration class or the mainstream class.
Yeah.
In grade 1, I was probably, I don't know, I don't remember, but I was maybe 50-50.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
By the time I was in grade 4, I was probably 90-10.
Yeah.
Mainstream to community class.
Right.
I usually spent my recesses in the community classes because I really jived with the people there.
Yeah.
We were all autistic. I jived. It's natural.
Mm-hmm. You
And I
have
also,
quite
even
the
though I didn't know this
coffee,
at the time, I didn't have to mask in the community class.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I did in mainstream, or at least I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, it made me circle back to like to feel like you have to.
Mhm.
Obviously, Laura and I, but everyone knows that kids can be incredibly cruel.
Oh, yeah.
And they sense differences very, 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 very quickly. Were you aware of people singling you out because you behaved differently, or you felt
No,
different?
it was more. It was not. Well, this is one thing I'm going to touch on a little bit briefly, because this borders into the gray area of don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
so I'm going to go brief into it.
Yeah.
I was kind of encouraged to break a few bad habits when I was out on the playground.
Okay.
Break a few. I don't know if they were autistic traits or not,
Okay.
but I was encouraged to break a few habits
Yeah.
when I was a kid. So that's where masking started.
Right. So
When I was
I'm
encouraged to
doing
break
this
those
wrong.
habits.
Something's not. I'm being reprimanded, or I'm being corrected, and I don't know.
I'm being held back is the word I'm going to use.
Okay. Okay.
I'm being like, I have to.
Sorry.
I can't do everything I want to do. Oh my gosh, I sound like such a spoiled brat right now. But anyway.
So sorry.
No,
When
you don't sound like a spoiled brat.
When
You
you
don't sound
say
like-
that people were encouraging you to hold back, are you talking about fellow students, or are you talking about education workers, or both?
This came from family. It might come from education workers too.
Yeah. I remember
My parents just they wanted me so badly to like have friends in the playground.
Yeah.
That this was before they knew about anything about masking or anything like that.
Yes.
This is before I
yes,
knew it existed.
Yes.
Right.
So that was kind
Yes.
of the unfortunate result.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is funny. I mean, we do all parents do this with all kids, right? You know, like they're
Of
constantly
course.
they're constantly
Of
coaching.
course.
You know,
I know my
And,
parents are probably watching this right now, and I'm hoping they're not taking this as a bad critique. I really hope they're not.
I bet you for $1 million that they're not. I bet you $1 million that they're not. Like, they're so crazy
I don't
about
have that
you
money.
and interested in the way you think. I bet you $1 million that they're not. Like if you go to watch any parent, the
Yeah,
first thing that
it's
they
so
do
common.
they're constantly giving kids social training, which is say this, do this, say that, say thank you, say that. It's just this automatic thing that parents do.
Yeah.
And
Actually,
I can
you got to hear something. I was reading a book. It was called seriously, or it was like something called "I Don't Look Autistic." That was a title, something like that. It was written by a famous comedian.
Okay.
I think it was Michael McQueary.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he actually talked about in the book how autistics through therapies were actually held to much higher social standards
Yes.
than his fellow classmates.
Yes.
They were taught
Yes.
hold the door for people. They're taught please and thank you. And when he was in first grade, the other 6-year-olds around him, they didn't have all those
Know how
skills.
to do that. Exactly.
Yes.
Sarah
Yes.
is chiming in here saying that breaks my heart. Masking started when you were told to change certain problem behaviors. I worry about this as a parent all the time. And Sarah, I hear you on that one, because I worry about that
I'm
too.
going to give you some advice, actually. Do your best. That's all you can do. Don't be worried about every little thing.
Yeah.
Don't you can't account for everything that can happen 20 years in the future. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You'd become a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that.
We don't want that.
Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that.
It's interesting that you say that, Phil, because I think like I've had some very frank conversations with both of my kids over the last couple of years as they're entering adulthood and they're reflecting on their childhood and, you know, what was good and what was not so good. And often the place that we end up in those conversations is, look, all we know for sure is that all of us were doing the best that we could with what we knew at the time.
That's all that's all any kid can ask.
Right. And, you know, there's an honesty to that of saying, you know, like, look, did I make mistakes? I'm sure that I did. And there's like the things that I did that were mistakes that I know were mistakes. And then there's the mistakes that I made that I don't know that are mistakes. But Of course I made them, but was I trying my best? Was I accessing every resource I could get my hand on? Was I reaching out to every expert and help community helper that I could
I actually have a saying, Laura.
Hmm.
A lot of people judge others by actions. I don't.
Hmm.
I judge people by their intentions behind their actions. If
Ooh.
someone robbed the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
I don't judge them straight away. They could either be a selfish bank robber or they could be a parent who's completely in poverty.
That sounds an awful lot like ABA.
What?
What do you mean?
Well, you know, it's like, what are the set of circumstances that cause?
He's doing a functional analysis.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
so like, this sounds a lot like, you know, I wonder too about like the intensity of parenting, right? We love our kids intensely, right? You know, and we become very hyper. Yeah, I know. They can't leave you alone, right? They had to get in there right at the very beginning. I'm like, get out of here. We're talking to Philip. We don't want you, mom and dad. My God. Right. So, but that's what we are. And I wonder if the pushback is just as intense, like, you know, because every child, myself, all of us, we get to a point where like, mom, dad, you're fucked, you know, like, get away from me, you know. And I wonder too, if that's part of the intensity of the love, and then the intensity of like pushback, stop circling.
I have absolutely no idea.
Get rid of the helicopter. Yeah.
I will say one thing. I'm hoping to move back to Waterloo the next 3-4 weeks. My parents hope for the exact same thing.
little too close there in the house.
Yeah, a little too close for comfort.
They want me to live independently. Simple as that.
Well, yes, yeah, of course.
Well, we're getting close to the hour, and you know, this conversation took some interesting twists and turns, and we got off to a rough start because of me. I'm so sorry, and we wanted this to be an open Q&A. We wanted people to feel free to weigh in. We only 2 people sent us questions.
Don't ask.
Yeah, and well, I'm hoping that if we want to continue having conversations like this, Philip, that the community will know what we're on about, and they'll send us more, because the conversation would be fuller if we had more input. But let's go through a few more.
We got through a lot of the questions that came in before. There's one that came in the chat. Were you always verbal?
I was delayed with speech.
Right.
But for the most part, yes. I think I was delayed about a year, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
I think I only started speaking when I was in ABA, so at least 2.5 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I think your speech came in a little sooner than Cliff's. It's interesting because I'm actually able to talk to Cliff about before he was able to speak, and he actually has a couple of memories of what that was like.
Oh, I don't.
So that's something that parents can think about, is like that may be a conversation that you can have with your kid one day. But of course, there's all those parents out there that just pray to be able to have any conversation with their kid one day, right?
The self-advocates are praying with you.
Exactly. So here's a question, and you don't have to go here if you don't want to.
Always.
Did you experience any bullying? And if so, did you cope? How did you cope?
Not too intensely, no. I never really had any bullies. I had people that I didn't like. They got on my nerves, teased me a bit. This was in the early days of daycare, even a little bit in the early days of high school, tiny bit. How did I cope? In the early days, it was a lot harder. I don't really remember. I've got a visitor.
Oh no.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Hey,
Jay, you're such a photo bomber.
He doesn't want me to leave. He's gonna watch sports with.
No, we know. Well,
don't you start. You're not that emotional.
Wait. While he's here.
Yeah, while he's here, let's get him in.
Here's this question.
Yeah.
Take a time out.
Oh,
okay.
1 sec. Let me just get my earbuds out so I can actually hear.
Oh, he goes. He can't hear us. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Testing.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? So Jay, we want to.
What did he just do?
Did he just turn off the camera?
I did something.
It's okay.
Dad, don't touch anything, Dad.
All right.
One sec,
Who-
guys. Putting you
Yep.
on full blast.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Can you hear okay?
Marginally.
Marginally?
EFG.
Well, I'm old, so there's my excuse.
No, it's earbuds.
Okay. I don't know if this is fair to ask while Jay's in the room, but what the hell? I'm just going to go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. It's personal.
Is there anything you wish your parents had done differently to advocate for you, support you
Ooh.
through school and just
No,
life
you-
in general before you were able to advocate for yourself?
No,
I think I hear my
you
mother calling me.
didn't. No,
Sorry.
you
I
didn't.
did.
You didn't.
Mhm.
What'd you do wrong, Jay? How'd you screw up?
I probably encouraged the mask.
It's
Uh-huh.
okay. You're forgiven.
I probably encouraged the mask because I'm learning now how that could be detrimental, psychologically detrimental.
A rack of lamb will make up for it.
A what?
A rack of lamb will make up
It's
for
that-
it.
and you know what? It is so difficult because you want your kids to fit in with all the others and be accepted by all the others.
Yeah.
But
And you want to
it-
help.
You know, and
Yeah.
even though we encourage Philip to be proud of who he is and what he is,
Yeah.
it was all internalized rather than being externalized.
Mhm.
Mhm. Is it possible that parents are trying to protect their children? They don't want to give them the whole story, because you don't want to paint the world as a difficult place or a place full of mean people. You want to paint the
Not done
world as being open for anybody else.
Mhm.
And so in trying to teach your kid how to fit in, you protect them from that knowledge of, like, well, some people are not going to understand when you do ... Some people are not going to understand. So there's a choice you need to make here,
Yeah.
Well, there was a word that Philip learned when he was very young. It was a very advanced word, and he used it a lot. I'm not neurotypical.
Mhm.
I was taught that when I was 7.
Yeah, he was 7 years old, and probably, I'm sure there's other 7-year-olds, but yeah, it's a rarity to hear that. And it was at that point where he sort of, it wasn't internal anymore. It
Mhm.
became, that was the starting point of revealing at least a part of the mask.
Mhm.
But
I have a follow-up question for you, Phil.
Yeah.
If you become a parent one day, what are some things that you might do differently than your parents did?
Or what if they're neurotypical?
Oh God, that's a different question.
Look, that's part 2. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, no, okay,
Laura, I only have one possible answer for you. I
Right.
have no clue.
okay, which is such a great answer because
I want
big
to say
reveal.
that I would not encourage a mask, but no one wants to encourage a mask.
nobody does. I remember struggling with that, especially with Clara, when she hit that horrible age that that preteen girls get to, where they are just unfathomably awful to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And I struggled for about a year with, like, what you were talking about, Jay, trying to encourage her to fit in. And I think, I don't know if there was a particular moment, but I came to a realization that there was no point trying to get her to fit in. And that her attitude of, I'm okay, what's wrong with the rest of you, that you lie to each other and you talk behind each other's back and you try to create drama. I'm just out here being autistic and being brutally honest. And what you see is what you get.
Amazing.
Who has the problem?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember a teacher saying to me once, sometimes she overshares or she says things and doesn't understand the social consequences. And I worry that, people don't like her because of that. And then I worry that she's hurt that people don't like her. And I
Mhm,
remember the point
mhm.
where I realized that she was confident enough in her own skin. And I said to the teacher, no, you don't understand. She doesn't care what other people think.
Mhm.
And the teacher said, oh, you're saying that, but like, deep
Philip,
inside, she really
is-
cares. But here's the point.
Yeah.
The point was, she genuinely didn't care.
Yeah.
right? Like you learn to pick and
Impressive.
choose who your real friends are, and the rest of them, she doesn't
That's what I
care.
want to ask you, Philip. Is fitting in a neurotypical preoccupation?
What does that mean? You're using techie
Are
words.
we NTs just obsessed with fitting in?
Mhm.
No. That was why I'm asked. I wanted to fit in.
It's human nature.
So you wanted
It's
it
human
too.
nature.
It's human nature. It's human nature. And
Karen, there's something I like to sort of share as well. I remember when Philip was diagnosed and Kathy and I were up for hours on the computer, reading and researching. And I came to a moment where they were talking about the flapping, you had close but very limited friends, certain behaviors. And all of a sudden, I had the biggest smile on my face. I go, I finally got answers of why certain things happened to me. At that point, I realized I was probably on the spectrum. And all these answers, it was almost like somebody opened up a book and gave me all the answers I wanted. And it was a relief because I thought something was wrong and it wasn't.
No.
I just wasn't, I've never got diagnosed. I went to see my doctor at the time, who was also a psychotherapist. He goes, Jay, you don't seem like you are on the spectrum. I said, no, I am on the spectrum. I'm not going to get tested. I don't feel like I need that. I don't think I need a third-party affirmation to prove it. I do have autistic tendencies, and it gave me answers why certain things happened in my life. So for parents out there who are researching what's happening with the kids, it might be a little bit of a self-reflection.
Oh, definitely.
I'm just gonna make a request here. I'm getting a little bit tired of holding my phone like this.
Okay, I'm gonna step aside. You continue. You're in good hands.
Don't worry, they'll have me home by
Thanks,
curfew.
Jay, thank you so much for sharing that.
That was.
I'm gonna get my
a-
earbuds back in so I can hear you guys a lot better.
Okay,
Yeah.
you'll be able to. So as you can see at the OAC, we are one big family. We
really
are noisy.
Oh, that's much
better. That's that better? I was
Oh my gosh, much
filling
better.
the time. I was filling the time, Philip, by saying that the OAC, we really are one big family.
Good time.
We're dysfunctional, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh boy, and how.
That's okay.
I think we've run down our time. I thank you so much, Philip, for sharing
problem.
once again and freestyling with us like this.
Yeah.
It was a little different.
Improv.
It really was. I mean, the last time we spoke, we watched a film together, which I thought maybe that would be a better way to talk about your life experience by talking about people we're watching, as opposed to putting you on the spot like this and making you work so hard, and I thank you so much for your candor and your bravery and your friendship, and most importantly, your activism. We are learning from each other, and I'm so excited to see and hear more about what you're going to be doing with the Adult Services Committee. And I hope that other self-advocates and parents who want to get involved will contact you, because you have some great projects.
It happened a bit already.
Yeah, great.
It'll happen more after this.
Can I say one thing?
Please
I know
do,
one
please
habit
do.
I've been falling into. There are some parents where they reach out to me and sometimes I don't respond for a while. Sometimes when that happens, it means I'm actually a little bit overwhelmed with the personal questions. It actually takes me a long time, like a span of weeks, to get back to someone sometimes.
Right. So people should take note of that.
I apologize if I'm causing inconvenience with that. It's something I'm actually trying to work on a little bit.
You don't have anything to apologize for, Philip.
You don't. I go through it.
It's your generosity comes through, and people can wait. They understand. They can wait, and we'd rather.
Except
We
for
always
services,
rather.
we're done waiting.
For this, they can wait. They can wait. So let's sign off.
I just
Laura,
want to say it's been.
Please.
This has been so awesome, and it has been my joy and my privilege to watch you grow into the amazing activist that you are. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
So part 2, part 3, maybe what we need to do is organize a chat about adult services. I think it would be very interesting to talk to people who are perhaps parenting people who are non-speaking and who are also looking for employment or looking for some kind of occupation. Let's see if we can get a debate going or a discussion going in terms of the varying needs that are out there. It's certainly not my wheelhouse, but I do think that we need to be, at least in terms of these kinds of conversations, bringing that out into the community more. And we need your help, Philip. We need to do a better job.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Awesome.
Yeah. You agree, Laura?
100,000%.
100,000%. Okay. All right. Bye, guys. Stay on the line.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
I'm going to just end the Zoom. Good night,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you. Whoop. Sorry for my looking at my chest. Okay, we're going to end as we began. Whoa. Goodbye.